Hello guys, welcome back. It's Masha. Today I'm making vegan one-pot creamed beans and greens. So beans and greens are basically my answer to everything. They're total staples for me and I really focus on including them into our everyday meals. They're super nourishing, super filling, affordable, and they combine really well together. This particular recipe is kind of my wintry version of beans and greens. It's extra filling, creamy, cozy, and so delicious. So I'm gonna get started now, and since this is a very rustic dish that's made up of very simple ingredients, I find that it's really helpful to have something extra to finish the dish with, which in this case will be chili oil. So we're gonna make a quick chili oil now. I have a small saucepan preheating to about medium heat. I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of olive oil and a teaspoon of chili flakes. And I'm gonna kind of swirl everything around, and you'll hear and see that the chili flakes are kind of shimmering. And we're gonna let them shimmer like this for about 3 to 4 minutes. Then we're gonna turn off the heat and just let this sit and infuse while we make our beans and greens. So I set aside the chili oil to infuse while we do everything else. And now we're gonna work on preparing our greens. So my green of choice for this particular dish is chard. And I kind of think that chard doesn't get enough love, but it's such a great green. It's beautiful, it's affordable, it's easy to grow if you've ever tried growing it. And the stems are edible, and I find them to be much more easily edible than, say, kale stems. Now that being said, you don't have to just use chard, you can also use kale or even spinach or any other greens that do well with cooking. You would just have to adjust the cooking times based on the sturdiness of the greens that you're using. And even though we're using both the greens and the stem for this dish, we are gonna separate them because the stem needs longer to cook. That's the secret to preparing chard stems, is that they need time to get kind of soft and melt into a dish, while chard leaves just cook way quicker. So that's why we're gonna separate them. So I'm just gonna stem it like you would kale. Leave the stems in one pile, and then for the leaves, I'm just gonna tear them into more bite-sized pieces. And just keep going like that. And it's okay if there's some green left on your stem. It doesn't have to be super perfect or strict. Again, this is a super rustic dish. And the beans that I like using the most here are white beans. I have them here. And I just like white beans here because they are already naturally super creamy, and that goes well with the overall creaminess of the dish. But you could use other beans. For example, chickpeas would work here, but white beans are my favorite in this situation. Alright, so I've got the greens separated from the stems, and now we're just gonna work on slicing the stems. So just bunch them up into one even bunch, and then just thinly slice like you would celery. And you can use any kind of chard here, it doesn't matter. I'm using rainbow chard just because that's what I was able to find at the store. But you could use regular white chard, or sometimes they sell yellow chard. The only thing to note is that the pigment of the stems contributes color to the final dish. So if you have pink stems, the final dish will be a little pinkish. If you have yellow stems, there will be a little yellow. So that's something to consider. I happen to think it looks beautiful like that, so I don't mind using the rainbow chard. Next, we're gonna dice one yellow onion. And I'm starting to cry. I know there's like all those tricks for not crying when you are cutting onions, like hold a piece of toast in your mouth or something, or like hold a match in your mouth. But I don't know, I'm too lazy to figure it out. So I just end up crying every time. And I have one lemon, and we're gonna be using both the zest and the juice from the lemon. Instead of zesting the whole lemon finely, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut off thin strips of zest of the lemon. Try to go really thin, try to not get any of the pith, because the pith can be kind of bitter. But basically just with a sharp knife, Go slowly and not too deep, and cut off a few strips of the lemon zest. And this will just give us a little bit of a more robust, zesty flavor. And I'm also going to juice this lemon now, but we're not going to need the juice until almost the very end. And set that aside. And the last bit of prep that we're going to do is mince some garlic. And I actually don't usually cook like this when I have all my mise en place, everything in place, and then start cooking. I usually just take a look at whatever I'm cooking, the recipe, or I review it in my head, and I just think about what I can be already cooking while I'm preparing something. But here, since I'm taking up the whole countertop to cook right here, I'm not really using the stove. It makes more sense to just have everything prepared. But otherwise, if I was cooking this dish on a weeknight, what I would probably be doing is I would first just prep the chard, the onion, and the lemon zest and put those in my pot and start sauteing them and give them a head start, because I know that I'm not adding the garlic until later. So that way I can be mincing the garlic while these things are already cooking, and that really speeds up the cooking process. So that's just a little tip for weeknight cooking or whenever you're in a rush. It's always a good idea to familiarize yourself with whatever recipe you're cooking completely before you start cooking, so that way you know exactly what's coming and you're not taken off guard or by surprise, and that just helps avoid any unnecessary stress. Because cooking is not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be relaxing and fun and creative. So I'm gonna heat this pot up to medium heat. I'm gonna add some olive oil just to generously coat the bottom of the pot. Let that warm up a little bit. And now I'm gonna add the chard stems and the onion. A nice pinch of salt. And I'm just gonna saute this for about 7 to 10 minutes until the onion is soft and translucent, and until the chard stems are really nice and soft and melted. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes and everything is nice and soft and melty. Next, we're gonna put the garlic and the lemon zest in the pot and stir it around for just a few seconds until nice and fragrant. Now we're gonna add our beans as well as some vegetable broth, some bay leaves, and another super generous pinch of salt just to season everything. And just check your beans. If you do have canned beans, if they're unsalted, you definitely need more salt. If they are salted, you need less salt. I buy the Eden brand unsalted beans. I really like those, so I need more salt. So stir this to combine. And now we're gonna bring this to a simmer. Okay, so our broth is simmering and we're gonna let it simmer like this uncovered for about 10 minutes. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna let the broth reduce and for all the flavors to concentrate. Okay, so the broth has reduced and I'm just gonna discard the bay leaves, which float to the top, so it should be pretty easy to discard them. And in the recipe I also say to discard the lemon zest, but recently I've been leaving it in and I really kind of like getting those big chunks of lemon zest, but you could remove it if you prefer. And now we're gonna add our greens. So add them right on top of the beans. We're not gonna mix them in yet, just like this on top. We're gonna cover the pot and we're gonna leave it like this for a few minutes. And what this is gonna do is the simmering broth and beans are gonna create steam and the greens are gonna steam in there and they're gonna wilt and reduce in volume super quickly, like within just a few minutes. Alrighty, so it's only been a few minutes and I'm gonna take the lid off. And you'll see that the greens have completely reduced and wilted. Now we're just gonna stir them in to incorporate. And next we're gonna add some plant-based milk. So for the milk in this recipe, I really recommend using something really nice and creamy and rich. I know that some store-bought plant-based milks can be a little watery, which is not great for this dish. We really want something rich. What I usually recommend to use here is either oat milk, like store-bought oat milk, or homemade cashew milk. So I have homemade cashew milk today, and the reason for that is that I just find oat milk to be the creamiest plant-based milk on the market. If you have some other really creamy plant-based milk that you prefer, definitely use it. Or you can make your own cashew milk, which is just the creamiest, most amazing option. To make cashew milk is super easy. You just have to soak 1 cup of cashews and then blend it with 4 cups of water until smooth. If you want extra creamy cashew milk, you can also reduce the amount of water to 3 cups from 4 cups, and that will just give you almost like a cashew cream. So I have my homemade cashew milk here, and I'm gonna add it in. I'm gonna stir it in, and this looks so yummy and creamy. And now what we wanna do is just bring everything back up to a simmer and then turn off the heat right away once it's simmering so that the milk doesn't curdle or do any weird stuff. So everything is back up to a simmer, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. And our last step is to add our lemon juice. And that's just gonna add a little bit of zing and brightness to an otherwise very earthy and creamy dish. Mix that in. And that's it, our creamed beans and greens are done. So easy, so quick, super weeknight friendly. And you know what I just thought of? Hold on. I have this beautiful sourdough baguette, and I think we should make some garlic bread. So the way that I make garlic bread, or maybe I should call it garlic toast, is super simple. This is the kind of garlic toast I grew up with. So I'm just gonna cut off chunk. Gonna cut it in half lengthwise, like this, and then just toast it. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna take a clove of garlic. You only need a small clove for this, and I'm just gonna peel it and cut it in half. And you want to toast up the toast until it's pretty crispy, because what we're going to do is we're going to take the garlic with the cut side and rub it on the toast. You can just rub it on the cut side, or if you like it extra garlicky like I do, you can rub it everywhere. On the crust, on the sides. And then if we want to take this completely over the top, drizzle it with a little olive oil. Totally optional, but very delicious. So that's ready. So we've got our beans and greens. Ladle them in, making sure to catch plenty of greens. And I'm gonna drizzle this with our chili oil, which became this beautiful orangey red color as it infused. So good. I'm gonna give this a taste, even though I know exactly what it tastes like because I make it all the time. The beans themselves are so creamy, and the greens are just kind of totally melted. And the chili oil just really takes it over the top. And with this, oh my god, so good. So I'll link this recipe in the description box below for you guys. I hope that you'll give it a try some weeknight or just any night, since it's so cozy and comforting and nourishing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.